Element 6 is a little flower using a type of bullion stitch. We are going to make 4 flowers, and they're all in different colors. So round 1 for the first one is color A. And we make a magic ring. I'm going to chain 2, which counts as a double crochet. We'll place 11 more double crochet into the ring. We'll join to the second chain of our starting chain and fasten off. So you'll repeat that using colors C, D, and E. Round 2 for the first flower is color C. We will slip stitch in any of the double crochet of the first round, chain 3. So now we're going to make a bullion block stitch. So we will double crochet in that next single crochet. We're going to work around this loop. So it's described as 5 unfinished half double crochet. So yarn or front post half double crochet, yarn over, go around the post to pull up a loop, leaving those loops on your hook. We'll do that 4 more times. So we should have 11 loops on our hook. We'll insert in the same stitch to pull up a 12th loop. Yarn over, pull through all 12, and I sort of hold or pinch the bottom of those loops as I pull through. We don't want to pull it tight, and then we'll chain 1. Again, don't pull it tight. There will be a little bit of a loop that you see on the back, but it's on the back side. And then we'll chain 3. So that first chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, it's just closing the stitch. So we'll slip stitch in that next stitch, chain 3, bullion block stitch in the next. So that's a double crochet, yarn over, hook around the post, pulling up a loop 5 times. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I just be careful as I'm pulling up those loops not to have them very tight. Insert in that same stitch to pull up our 12th loop, yarn over, pull through all the loops on your hook, chain 1 to close, chain 3. So I've worked that twice. You'll work your way around for a total of 6 of those bullion block stitches. You'll close the round by slip stitching in our first slip stitch that we made and fasten off. So you will repeat this on your other colors as well with D, E, and A. So we put the hat on our stand and we kind of roughly pin the flowers to the element 5 and see how they will sort of fit in to our other elements. So you'll notice once we have those joined, there'll be a few little filler places that we need to fill in. So the designer has some suggestions. You may or may not have room for all of them, and you will have to gauge that, but I will show you the ones that are in the pattern and how we do that. And I may have to tweak mine a bit too at the end. Maybe get a little bit better idea laying it flat where you might have some spaces and some gaps as well. So we're going to remove the flowers again. I've laid them out in what I think is my final color arrangement that I want them to be in. And we're going to work around them with a color to join them together. into one big element 6. So for the first round, we will be using color B. So I just want to take the time to point out a few of the stitches on the flower. So we started with this chain 3 and then made the bullion stitch and another chain 3. The top chain of that chain 3 we will need to be able to identify as we work into that. And then the double crochet that we started with for the bullion block, we'll work into the back loop of that and in the closing chain, and then the top chain of the next chain 3. So we're going to take our first flower and we want to start at any third chain just before the bullion stitch. 1, 2, 3. We'll place a back loop only double crochet in there. Back loop only half double crochet in the double crochet part of the bullion stitch. So that's a half double crochet made in that back loop. Then in the closing chain of the bullion stitch, a back loop only single. And then in the first chain of the chain 3, back loop only single. And then we want to come down and work in this slip stitch before the next bullion petal. So that's 2 double crochet, yarn over, insert in that slip stitch. Make 2 double crochet. And then we're going to skip that chain 3 in the double crochet of the bullion. We will make a back loop only single crochet, back loop only half in, back loop only single crochet in the closing chain, back loop only half double crochet in the first chain of the chain 3, chain 4. So finding the third chain of our next petal, insert in that back loop only, and then finding our next flower, we want to find the closing chain of the petal. That's the double crochet, the closing chain, insert in that back loop as well. Pull through there and the first flower to finish that slip stitch, chain 4. And then on the next petal, we want to back loop only half double crochet in the double crochet of the bullion stitch. So it's a half double in the back loop. Back loop only single in the closing chain of that stitch and the first chain of the chain 3. And then coming down in the slip stitch, we want to make 2 double crochet. Then in the next petal, we will do back loop only single crochet in that double of the petal and in the closing chain, back loop only half double crochet in that first chain of the chain 3, chain 4. And then by this next petal in the third chain, insert under the back loop, and finding our next flower, we want to find the closing chain of any of these bullion stitches, insert in the back loop, pull through both flowers and the loop on our hook. For that back loop only slip stitch, chain 4. And again, we'll place a back loop only half double crochet in the next petal in the double crochet part, back loop only single in the closing chain, and back loop only single in the first chain of the chain 3. 2 double crochet down in that slip stitch between the petals, back loop only single in the double crochet of the bullion stitch of the next petal, and in the first chain of the chain 3. In the closing chain, we placed a back loop only single, then back loop only half in that first chain of the chain 3, chain 4, finding the next petal, that third chain before the petal, back loop only, and our last bullion flower, finding the closing chain of one of the bullion stitches, pull the loop through both flowers and the loop on your hook, chain 4. Then working on this last petal, we want to make sure it's facing forward. There we go. Finding that next petal, back loop only half double crochet in the double crochet there, back loop only single in each of the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, 2 double crochet down in that slip stitch between 2 petals, back loop only single in that third chain before the bullion stitch, back loop only single in each of these next 2 stitches, so that's the double crochet and the closing chain, back loop only double crochet in the first chain stitch of the chain 3, then we'll chain 2, and we want to come down and make a slip stitch in that same back loop as our double crochet that we have just made. Do not cut your yarn. So now we're going to start working down what we're calling the short side. So I'm just going to turn my element this way. We are going to continue. We want to come down to the slip stitch and place 2 double crochet in there. Finding the next petal, the chain 3, we want to place a back loop only single in that third chain. Back loop only single in each of the next 3, so that's the double of the bullion stitch petal. We'll place a back loop single, the closing chain, and the first chain of the chain 3. In this next slip stitch here, before the next petal, we want to place 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet. Two double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet. Don't cut your yarn. So now we're going to work along the bottom side. So again, I'm going to rotate the element. Finding that double crochet of that next petal, we're going to back loop only, half double crochet in there. In each of the next 2 stitches, back loop only single. So that's the closing chain and the first chain of the next chain 3. 2 double crochet down in the slip stitch between the petals. Then on the next petal, we will find the double crochet of the bullion stitch, back loop only single, back loop only single in each of the next 2. That's the closing chain and the first chain. In this slip stitch, we want to make 4 double crochet. That's 2, 3, and 4 double crochet worked between those petals. On the next petal, back loop only slip stitch in the top of that chain, that 3rd chain, just right at the start of the petal. That was a slip stitch. Back loop only slip stitch in each of the next 2 stitches, the closing chain and the first of the chain. Double crochet and in the closing chain. So we want to back loop only single in this next petal here. We have to be very careful at this stage not to let the flowers twist around, keeping what we've already worked towards the bottom. So this is the double crochet of the next flower, back loop only slip stitch in there, and in each of the next 2, the closing chain and the chain 1, or the first chain of the chain 3. So it's back loop only slip stitch. 4 double crochet again down in the slip stitch between the petals. Three and 4 double crochet. Finding the next double crochet of that next petal, back loop only single crochet, back loop only single in the closing chain, and then back loop only half in that first chain of the chain 3. So we want to repeat from this 2 double crochet in the slip stitch across to the next flower. Right there we'll have 2 times with the 4 double crochet and slip stitches. We want to repeat that 2 more times, and I'll meet you at that spot. So we have worked our way over. We should be at sort of the top of the last petal there. We are going to come down and work 2 more double crochet in that slip stitch between petals. Oops. Finding the double crochet of the next petal, back loop only single crochet, and in the closing chain, and then back loop only half double crochet in that first chain of the chain 3. Again, don't cut your yarn, and we're going to finish the second short side here. So in that slip stitch between the petals, this time we want to do that 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet. Two double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet. Back loop only single crochet in the 3rd chain of the chain 3. Back loop only single in the double crochet. And in the closing chain. And one more back loop only single in that 1st chain of that next chain 3. 2 double crochet in the slip stitch between the petals. Then we want to place a back loop only slip stitch in that next chain 3 at the top where we already put a back loop only double crochet. So back loop slip stitch in there, chain 2, and then slip stitch 2 our starting back loop only double crochet, and that last slip stitch does not count as a stitch. You can go ahead and fasten off. So now we want to begin to put element 6 to fasten it around the free side of element 5. So to help guide me, I want to find that starting back loop only double crochet of element 6, and then I want to skip 2 stitches. So our last stitch that we used when we sewed element 5, skip 2 stitches and we'll start in that 3rd stitch. Okay, so we're just going to work our way around attaching this to element 5, and then our last element, or the last flower of the element in that the last double crochet. So that one should fit right to the stitch before we left off previously. So as you're sewing this, we are not going to be attaching the chain 4s to the element. Okay, so I'll also pop the picture from the written pattern that shows you the arrows where those spots are for you to see, but I'll try and show you as I get to that spot. We are going to be working from the wrong side. So I still have a long tail end where I want to start joining. And again, we will work in that same manner where we take the back loop only loops and just work around. Try to make sure my stitch markers don't make that too loose. And we'll just match up our stitches, stitch by stitch, back loop only whip stitch in the same way we have before. So I'll let you work on that. So I've worked across my first flower, that last stitch before the chain 4, back loop only there and join it to the element 5. Then I want to make a joining stitch between that same stitch and the next half double crochet, skipping over those chain 4s and connecting those together. And then in that same stitch and into the next stitch on element 5, and continue joining the flowers along element 5 in that way. So as I'm piecing my hat together here, I can see I'll need a little bit of a filler stitches in here and in this section here, and then as well a small little triangle up in this part. So in this part here, if you have some of a gap, we have some extension rows we can add to this element 3. So I'm going to show you those rows now. I'll show you all of the rows, and then you can decide how much of that you may need or how it fits in with your particular hat, and then finish making those filler sections and sew up any remaining gaps. So we want to look at element 3. I'm going to be attaching my flower to element 2 and just right in the corner of element 3. Okay, so I haven't finished all my sewing, as I'm not going to need all of these rows of the extension here. So my flower is just sitting loosely. But if you have gone ahead and sewn yours, for me, I think this will be my last stitch that will be joined. So I'm going to join our color E yarn to this stitch of the flower just past the final seam, and I'm going to be making a back loop slip stitch to join my color E. So then we come down, and I want to place a back loop only slip stitch in the stitch right after the seam. So that'll be the first double crochet of the 2 made in 1 stitch. And then we'll back post half double crochet, starting with that next stitch and around a total of 5 stitches. Back post half double crochet. And then back post double crochet around the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Back post double crochet. And then we're going to work some back post treble crochet. The pattern states 4 stitches for that. One, 2, 3, and 4. Now I have 1 stitch left. You may have that as well or fewer. You could either work a back post treble. I think I will be connecting that stitch as I sew up a little bit more to the heart. Then we want to slip stitch to our heart. Now imagine that I have this sewn up. We want to go to skip 1 stitch after the end of a seam, slip stitch to the next in the back loop only. Okay, so I'm going to have mine sewn up a little bit farther, and you just want to slip stitch where it naturally falls against that heart element and then fasten off. So this would be row 7 for element 3. So this is the extension now. And you can see how using longer stitches, it helps to build up more sort of in a triangle shape here. So for this next row, we're using color D. We want to find on the flower of element 6 that next free stitch, and again we will make a slip stitch in that back loop to join our yarn. And then back down to element 3 on top of those back post stitches we worked. We're going to skip the slip stitch. We'll make a 4 single crochet popcorn in the next stitch, which is that first back post half we made. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I just put my hook in that first stitch, pulled the working loop through, chain 1 to close, does not count as a stitch, chain 1. We'll skip the next stitch and do that 2 more times. 4 single crochet popcorn in the next stitch. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and once more, 4 single crochet popcorn. Skip a stitch. Then similarly, we'll work 2 popcorn, 4 half double crochet popcorn in the next stitch, chain 1, and you can do that twice. So then we'll make a 5 double crochet popcorn, chain 1, skip 1. The last popcorn will be made in that slip stitch. So there won't be a skip after that 3rd popcorn. Okay, so I worked my popcorns along there, the last one in that back loop only slip stitch. Finding the next stitch on the heart, we're going to make a back loop only slip stitch there, and then we can fasten off. So with color E again, we'll do one more row of this filler section on element 3, finding our flower on element 6, the next free stitch, join with a back loop only slip stitch, and then come back down to that popcorn row that we just worked. Place a front post single around this first popcorn. Double crochet in that next skip stitch of row 1, working in front of last round. We'll do that 3 more times. Front post single around the popcorn, double crochet in the skip stitch, working in front of the chain of last round. Three and 4 times for that front post single around the popcorn, double crochet in the skipped stitch. Front post single around this next popcorn. Then we'll make 2 treble crochet in the next skip stitch. 1 and 2. Front post half around the next popcorn, and we'll do that twice more. 2 treble in the skip stitch, front post half around the popcorn, 2 treble in the next skip stitch, and finishing with that front post half around that last popcorn, and then working on the heart element in that next free stitch, back loop only slip stitch, and fasten off. So far, you can sew in your ends now, or when we're finished, that's up to you. I will leave my ends until I know for sure how I'm going to connect all my pieces. Okay, and then this flower will be able to join nicely there. And then there's this little bit of sort of a triangle gap there to fill in that section. We're going to make just a little shell there. So using color A, All right, so with color A, we have these 3 5 double crochet popcorn. We want to start in the treble crochet that's just behind that popcorn, just before that popcorn. So we have 2 trebles in the same stitch. In that second treble, we will join our yarn with a slip stitch. Skip 2 stitches. Then in that next stitch, which again will be a second treble, we will place 6 double crochet. Three, 4, 5, and 6. Skip 2 stitches and then single crochet in each of these next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and then this third single crochet will be in that slip stitch. And then back on the harp, we want to slip stitch in that next free stitch of the heart and fasten off. Okay, you will see how that fills the gap. Mine helps me know how to sew my flowers a little bit better now that I see that. So now it's up to you to finish filling in any spots that you may need to with some Tunisian triangles. You can use some of your yarn ends if there's 1 or 2 stitches somewhere that you just need to fill in that gap a bit. You're welcome to do that. So I will need a filler triangle in here.
So when you have filled in all the gaps and have all the pieces sewn together, you can use your creativity and add some decoration to the brim of the hat. I used some surface crochet stitches and a button and made a little ribbon to decorate mine. You can see in the Facebook group and the written pattern some other examples, but it's time for your creativity to shine, and then enjoy using this hat or gifting it. And we wish all of those dealing with breast cancer all the best.